Insecurity remains a serious challenge in Nigeria. Almost every community is setting up vigilante groups and neighborhood watches. This forms the basis of our discussion today on Conversation with Azu, a weekly diary on life and politics. Azu, the columnist, will be joining us via Zoom from wherever he is to discuss the topic he has chosen for today's column, which is Miyetti Allah Vigilante mocks elite hypocrisy. You're welcome to the show, Azu.
Well, thanks for having me again from wherever you are connecting. But I'm in Lagos now. It's a pleasure to join you this morning. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's start this way. There are mushroom vigilante groups in nearly every community these days, and yet insecurity remains pervasive. Why so, and what is the way out of this?
Thank you, Julius. I'm not an expert at security, and even those who are experts, I'm sure will tell you that to some extent we are all responsible for our own safety and security, but that is to some extent because the purpose why government exists is for the safety and security of its citizens. That's the primary purpose of government. But as to why we have had a fairly escalated or elevated level of insecurity, especially of the kidnapping variety in the last couple of months, that's not, of course, to understate elevated violence in some parts of the country, especially in Plateau State. I think it's in my view, I think that is a result of a number of factors. Well, I think that the primary reason does seem to me to be often there's a correlation between insecurity and the level of poverty. Not saying this is applicable in all situations, but often those who have researched this subject have found some correlation between poverty. And the level of poverty in this country, the level of desperation, it does not justify crime and criminality, of course, but it's the level of multi-dimensional poverty has escalated so badly that many folks have very sadly and regrettably been driven into crime and criminal activities, such as the nature which we're discussing. That clearly is a reason why. One reason. I think that another reason, of course, is that there's also been an elevation in the level of ethnic tensions in many parts of the country. Some crimes and criminality have unfortunately been exploited by politicians, within the ethnic card. I think that that's also responsible to some extent. I also think that another reason why there's been an escalation is that, when people see that crime and criminality is not punished or penalized, then there's an incentive to commit more crime. So I suspect that the failure and the very unfortunate failure in security and intelligence may also have contributed to the significant elevation in the level of crime that we have witnessed in recent times.
All right, your title presupposes that the setting up of a vigilante group by the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria is a mockery. Why so?
Well, because this is the same Miyetti Allah, if you remember, that widely despised and feared, if you like, in many parts of the country as the boogeyman of an ethnic group. And it's amazing that we have seen sort of the reincarnation, if you like, of that same group now showing interest in safety and security. You recall, of course, that most of the farmer-header clashes that took place, especially in the north-central part of Nigeria, they took responsibility as part of the actors. They were implicated in a number of those very sad and regrettable incidents. So I find it rather interesting that the same group has now transformed itself into one that is interested in law and order, and has in fact improvised a security service that ostensibly is supposed to make the places where they are operating from safer and more secure. We'll have to wait to see how that plays out.
There are some people who think this issue about policing in Nigeria also has to do with the structure of Nigeria's federalism. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree clearly that I'm not saying that a different form of policing would produce, silver bullet, if you like, or that there are no problems even in federal states that will try to emulate, like in the US, that there isn't crime. Of course, crimes are documented very frequently in different states across the US. So the existence of structure does not necessarily presuppose the absence of crime or criminality. But I think that it's fairly obvious to me from my interest in studying this policing in different communities, especially in federal states, that the more devolved and involved local communities are in managing policing in their communities, the more effective such models tend to be. Our model is highly and inefficiently centralized, I think, and I think that that's obviously one of the major problems that we have been battling with for many years.
You've been a proponent of state policing, but there are well-founded fears about funding and about the possibility of abuse. What is the way out of these concerns about from many Nigerians and other schools of thought?
Well, yes, I mean, those fears, you cannot dismiss the fears. But you talked about funding. Let me try and deal with that first. Let me say that from what I hear and what I quite obvious to anybody who's looking closely enough, even this policing structure that we have, there are a number of states that are responsible for providing all kinds of things for police in their states, from vehicles to funding, all sorts of things. So I do not think that it's only the federal government, even as challenged as the current police force is. It's not only the federal government that's been responsible for providing funding for the police. But in respect to the matter of abuse, I find that, yeah, I mean, you can't also dismiss that, because some state governors, unfortunately, in Nigeria, have shown that they tend to think of the states as their fiefdom, so they can do whatever they like, whether it's with the police or within the State House of Assembly, or with virtually anything that they think is under their purview. So yes, I mean, one cannot just dismiss such concerns. But the counterfactual that we have to deal with is this, in my view. So is it okay, is it also acceptable for the federal government and for the federal police, so to speak, to be used by the federal government, both against its own opponents at the center and in the states and elsewhere? I mean, and why we hold ourselves hostage to the fear that the governors might abuse them. I think that was one of the issues of interest, the national conference in 2014, and suggestions were made about what possible structures can be put in place to ensure that such abuses, where they exist, are reasonably curtailed. I think that the fear of abuse should not prevent us from taking steps to improve the quality of policing for the safety and security of majority of our citizens.
I once had an interaction with the former Inspector General of Police, Chief Michael Kiro, and his take was that in opposition to state police, we should be talking about community policing. Now, there are some people who oppose state police, but in preference for community policing. And some other people think this is just a matter of nomenclature. What do you think, sir?
Well, I am aware, and I'm sure that most folks out there know that as a way of kicking the can down the road, which is what we do very nicely here, those who have tried to discredit the whole idea of state policing have tried different models or improvisations of state police, of community policing. They've done different pilot efforts, state policing in different. I'm talking about what they have seen. But the jury is out. I mean, your guess is as good as mine whether they have worked. And these have been half-hearted measures and attempts where you say you are doing community policing and you bring folks from parts of the country totally to a place that they're totally strangers to in the manner of speaking and in the name of community policing. And yet you depend on Abuja to get virtually everything that you need to manage those same community policing efforts. I think that, except we are playing the ostrich, all so-called efforts and experiments at community policing under the present policing structure have failed catastrophically. And I think the more we try, even in unitary states like in Britain, which is an example par excellence of unitary, you still find folks, being responsible. You find people, the bobbies, going street corners and all of those things on their bicycles and what have you. I really think, and if you look at India, one of the most complex, federal states, you find that there are models that tend to support that. The more involved local communities are with their own policing structure, the better it is. There is no perfect model anywhere. So if you start something and it's not working and you need to adapt, why not? But to keep pretending that what we have is working, doesn't make sense to me anymore. We're paying such a huge price. I think we've pushed this joke far enough and it's got to stop.
All right, finally, President Tinubu has been an advocate of true federalism and restructuring, as we can see from his almost endless battles with former President Olusegun Obasanjo, when both of them, one was president and the other was governor of Lagos State. Do you see the Tinubu administration doing something drastically different in relation to the establishment of community or state policing, as it were?
Well, the tire has met the road. Tinubu has moved from opposition, is now at the helm. I am sure that he has seen and he knows from experience all the attempts, all past attempts to change the policing and security structure and where all of that efforts have brought us to. Those efforts have really not worked. It's a matter that he has to decide. It's one of the things that his government has decided to prioritize. The issue of the economy, because again, you can't deal with security in isolation to the entire economic environment and how you manage poverty in the country. So these are issues that I believe his administration has prioritized. But like The Economist said in a recent publication, you cannot be doing it as worryingly. You can't follow the same model that Buhari followed of administrations before that didn't work, and hope that you are going to get a different result. So whatever he needs to do, he obviously has to do very, very quickly. Time is running out. And see the amount of bloodletting we're having in Plateau State, and it's going on for so long, and you keep wondering what exactly is happening, and see what is happening in Abuja and elsewhere in the country. So it's not a matter of if, it's just going to be a matter of when. And as his administration moves closer towards its 1 year mark, I do hope that he would not just be said to be a former advocate of a particular form of policing. He has to walk the talk. And I hope that he does it sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much, Azu.
Thanks
this
for
is
having
where
me.
we draw to a close on Conversations with Azu, and these are just snippets we've brought to you. For the full content of this, please visit azuishekwene.com to read books, articles, videos, and many more richer content on the site. Please subscribe, like, and share Conversation with Azu. Thanks for being on the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me, Julius. It's a pleasure. Thank you.